The lantern light wavered in the wind, casting long shadows across the barn wall like ghosts dancing behind canvas. The night air was sharp and silent, too silent. Not even the coyotes howled anymore. The rancher stood at the edge of the hill, his coat flapping against his legs, and stared into the black beyond the cottonwoods. The moon had risen, silver and slow, and beneath it, hoofprints. Fresh, heading west. Alone, no woman had any business riding out that way after dark. Not with the ground this dry, not with the stories folks whispered about what lived past the ridge, but she had. And he had followed. He hadn't told anyone. Not the boy who tended his cattle. Not the old preacher who always came around with his questions and warnings. He had just saddled up and rode after her. And he never spoke of what he saw when he caught up. But let's go back to where it all started. Dust had settled thick over the town of Hollow Bend, the kind that hung in the air like a prayer not yet answered. It was August, and the sun cooked the earth until the planks of the boardwalks creaked like old bones. Men wiped their foreheads with kerchiefs and spat into the dirt like they were trying to rid themselves of something deeper than tobacco. And, in the center of it all, she arrived. Her name was Anna Lee Calder. She came not in a wagon, but on foot, a cloth bundle over one shoulder. Hat too big for her face, eyes too sharp for the room she walked into. She walked straight into the general store and bought 1 tin of beans, a roll of bandage cloth, and a box of .38 shells. Folks watched. But no one asked why. Only the rancher, Miles Danton, kept watching after she left. He'd been near the back, picking up horse feed. Didn't say a word. But he saw the tremble in her fingers when she handed over the coins. He saw the way. She hesitated just a second too long at the sight of the bullets. He didn't say a word then either. The town said little about Anna. Just that she'd rented the old smokehouse cabin out past Red Hollow. Alone. Paid in advance. Never asked for a man's name to vouch for her. Some folks whispered she was running from something. Others figured she was looking for it. But no one asked her why. Not until she started showing up bruised. Just little things at first. A cut on the brow. A split lip. Red along the knuckles like she'd struck something harder than a barn wall. She'd show up once a week, always at dusk, always quiet. She never lied. But she never explained either. And folks, they let her be. As if a woman carrying silence like a coffin on her back was just one more piece of this broken frontier. Then came the boy. He showed up on Miles's land 3 weeks later. Couldn't have been more than 6. Skin the color of dark honey. Thin. Wild-eyed. Didn't speak a word of English. Or maybe he just chose not to. Hid behind the hay bales in the barn until the dog found him. When Miles brought him inside, the boy flinched like he'd been struck before. But he didn't run. He ate like he hadn't seen food in days. Anna's name was never spoken, but Miles had a quiet way of thinking. He tucked the boy into a cot by the stove, left some beans warming, and rode out past Red Hollow at dawn. Her cabin was locked. No smoke, no sound. But her horse was gone. And the earth out front told a tale he didn't like. Fresh drag marks. Blood. 2 sets of prints that he rode the long way back. That night, she returned. On foot. Half her coat torn. One side of her cheek painted in blood. But it was her eyes, calm, distant, full of something that looked too much. Like acceptance. That told Miles everything he needed to know. She didn't ask for the boy. Didn't ask what he'd seen. Just stood there, in his barn doorway, like a ghost wondering if it had the right to rest. You lost something, he said finally. She nodded once. That was all. I'll keep him warm tonight, Miles said, his voice low, careful. You come back tomorrow. She didn't. Not tomorrow. Not the day after. She was gone for 3 more days. And when she came back, she had a cut along her ribs and a bullet hole through her coat sleeve. She said nothing. Only looked at the boy sleeping in the loft. Then turned to leave again. Miles followed her to the edge of the barn. You can't keep doing this, he said. Not angry, just quiet. Like he was warning her more than accusing. She paused, looking down at the dust by her boots. I'm not doing it for me, she said. And then she walked into the dark again. Miles didn't sleep that night. The boy whimpered in his dreams, clutching the old quilt like it was a shield. Somewhere out past the cottonwoods, an owl cried out once, then fell silent. The next morning, Anna was gone again. This time, the tracks led farther west. No horse, just one woman, walking fast. Toward the canyon where the law didn't ride. Toward places where ghosts still had names. And that was when Miles saddled up, didn't say a word to the preacher who saw him ride out, didn't leave a note. He just followed her. And he never spoke of what he saw when he caught up. The boy was gone from the loft by the time the sun cleared the ridge. Miles had left before dawn, taking only his rifle, a canteen, and enough trail bread to last a day. He rode fast, the kind of fast that breaks horses if you don't know what you're doing. But Miles knew. And he knew the canyon she was heading for. It wasn't on maps. Locals called it Ash Hollow, a place where the wind sounded different, like it was carrying secrets from too far back. Old bones turned up there sometimes. Old camps. Once, a preacher's daughter went missing for 3 days and came back with no voice and a scar down her back shaped like a handprint. But Miles didn't believe in stories, he believed in tracks, and her boots were easy to follow, out past the limestone ridge, where the scrub grass died off and the cottonwoods thinned. He found something strange, a circle of stones. Fresh fire, still warm, and beside it, a single scarf, blue with frayed ends. Blood along one edge. He dismounted slowly, knees stiff, heart stiffening more. Then he heard the voice. Shouldn't have followed her. The sound came from behind the rocks. Gravelly, quiet, not threatening, just tired. Miles turned his head slowly. There stood an old man, wrapped in a hide coat too thin for the season. Long braids, face carved with lines, and eyes that didn't flinch. She yours? The old man asked. Miles didn't answer. She came through here last night. Wouldn't speak. Just walked straight into the hollow. What's in there? Miles asked. The man stared off toward the ravine. Something that took from her. Long ago. And now she's taking something back. Miles's fingers tightened. Around the reins. She have a weapon? The old man smiled, slow and crooked. She is the weapon. Back in Hollow Bend, folks were talking. The preacher, Whitcomb, had seen Miles leave. By afternoon, he was already stirring the coals of suspicion. You let a man shelter a wild child. Next, he's running after a woman with blood on her coat, he said to the blacksmith, who only grunted. This land's cursed when we ignore the order God gave. Sheriff Lyon, pipe in mouth, leaned on the porch post and squinted at the horizon. Ain't no law says a woman can't take care of her own. Law's not the same as order, Whitcomb snapped. That child don't speak English. Might not even be full human. And her? Who runs toward danger with open arms? No one had an answer for that. But then came the rider. A boy, no older than 12, on a broken-legged mare. Rode all the way from the southern pass. Said he'd seen smoke. Said he saw a man hanging from a tree by his wrists, still alive, but barely. And a woman standing below him, asking one question over and over. Where's the child? The canyon narrowed like a throat closing. Miles dismounted and led his horse the last quarter mile. Ash Hollow wasn't deep, but the walls rose on either side, charred and blackened like they'd been scorched long ago. No birds, no tracks now, just the echo of wind. That he found her coat first, draped over a rock, then her satchel, empty, and then he heard it, the rasp of breath. Not hers. He followed the sound, rifle down but ready to at the base of a leaning pine tree. A man hung by leather straps, shirtless, cuts on his chest, bruises old and new, mouth gagged with cloth, eyes swollen shut, but still alive. Anna stood 10 paces away, back turned, shoulders tense. Her hands were bloodied, a small knife at her side. Her breathing slow, like she'd just walked through fire and found peace inside it. Miles approached, boots crunching, softly on gravel. He hurt the boy, he asked quietly. She didn't answer. He looked again at the man hanging. Then he saw it, the brand. Fresh, burned into the man's left shoulder point, 2 jagged lines. Miles stepped back like he'd touched lightning. I've seen that mark, he whispered. Anna turned. Her face was calm, eyes hollow, a tremble in her jaw that didn't reach her voice. He's not the last, just the one who got lazy. Miles stared at her, then the man, then back. You gonna kill him? She looked up at the tree canopy. Not yet. Miles waited. The silence between them stretched like rope under strain. You brought a child into this, he said finally. I saved a child from this. Her voice cracked just once, then steadied. They kept them underground, near San Javier, in crates. 3 boys, 1 girl. Only the boy made it out. Miles's stomach turned. Anna stepped closer. They were uniforms. Talk like ranchers. But they're slavers. And no one's stopping them. Miles asked. Everyone's ignoring them. He looked at her hands again. Saw the bruises. The old cuts. She hadn't been walking out here for no reason. She'd been tracking, fighting, bleeding for strangers. Then he saw the fire in her eyes. Not rage, not vengeance. Just something sadder. Duty, the kind that breaks people quietly. She turned to the hanging man. He sold the others. Burned the records. The boy's mother killed herself in a wagon bed outside Santa Fe. Miles stepped forward, voice low. Then, let's take him in. Let the law. There is no law out here, she said. Just dirt that remembers things. He stood beside her now, rifle still down. What do you need? She looked at him like she hadn't expected that. Then, after a long pause, she whispered, time. He nodded, and for the first time in years, Miles Danton chose to stand against what the town might say. Not because he believed in justice, but because he believed her, because he saw what everyone else ignored, and because he knew what came next wouldn't be simple, but it would be right. They heard the drums by nightfall, not the kind you hear in stories, not rhythmic or loud, just slow, distant thumps, carried on the cold air like a heartbeat beneath the ground. Miles had heard war drums before, during the Sioux standoff near the Platte River in '72. This was different. This wasn't war. This was warning. Anna didn't flinch when the first sound came. She sat near the fire she'd built with shaking hands, but her eyes stayed fixed on the tree where the man still hung. He hadn't moved in hours. The blood had dried around his wrists and face, and the wind caught the edges of the cloth gag, fluttering it like a flag no one had claimed. Miles poured coffee into a tin cup and set it down near her. You're not surprised, he said. I left a mark, she replied quietly. They follow blood. Miles stared into the fire. Sparks snapped, leaping toward the stars before vanishing. Who are they? He asked. She looked at him, eyes reflecting flame. People who lost everything. Families. Land. Daughters. Miles swallowed. And they think you took something from them? No. They think I'm waking the ghosts. She stood and walked to the edge of the hollow, listening. They're not after him, she said. They're after me. Because I keep going where I shouldn't. Because I don't let it lie. Miles followed her eyes toward the dark ridge. How many? She didn't blink. Enough. He took a breath. What if we ride back now? Before they reach us. They'd find us halfway. They always do. Miles rubbed his beard. You're saying we wait. Anna turned to him, voice hollow. I'm saying we stand. The boy had vanished from the barn again. Sheriff Lyon rode out with 2 deputies and found the place cold. No fire, no footprints. Only a feather, black, streaked with white, tucked into the doorframe like a message. The preacher was already standing outside when they returned. Told you, he said. Told us what? Lyon asked, spitting tobacco. She brought it. That woman. All this silence and blood and devil's work. Now, even the child's gone. Lyon stared toward the hills. What do you think's really going on? He asked. Whitcomb's eyes narrowed. I think that rancher followed her into something unclean. And I think we best ride before it reaches town. One of the deputies stepped forward, uncertain. I heard a drum. The preacher nodded. Good. Let it remind you what happens when God's law is ignored. Night deepened like a bruise. Cold seeped in through the canyon walls. The man tied to the tree still hadn't moved. Miles sat polishing his rifle, listening for the silence behind the drums. There's always a silence before something terrible happens. Not loud, not sudden. Just a pause, like the land's holding its breath. Anna stood farther down the path, near the entrance to the hollow, cloak wrapped tight, boots buried in sand. Waiting. She didn't say she was scared. She didn't have to. Miles walked to her side, rifle slung across his chest. You trust them? He asked. I trust what they've lost. He studied her face. Not for the first time, he saw it. Not just strength, but damage. Not just fire, but ash. You going to try and explain? He asked. She shook her head. Explaining doesn't change anything. And then came the shadows, figures, quiet as smoke, slipping between the canyon rocks. No war cries, no calls, just footsteps, slow and sure. 20, maybe more. A few on horseback, most on foot. And in front, an older woman, face painted with ash and ochre, eyes like dark glass. She wore a robe of gray wolfskin and carried a single staff carved with names. Anna stepped forward. Miles didn't move. The woman didn't speak. Not for a long time. Then, finally, You took him. Anna's voice barely trembled. He took children. The woman's gaze flicked to the bound man. He was given land. And money. He traded what he thought belonged to him. Miles felt his stomach twist. Anna took another step. I brought it back. The boy. The woman didn't blink. You brought what's left. Silence fell like snow. Then a younger warrior stepped forward, face scarred, teeth gritted. She walked through our hunting ground. Without asking. Without offering. Anna turned to him. I came to stop it from happening again. The warrior spat. And you left his brother to rot in a ditch. Miles spoke, voice steady. You think vengeance heals? The woman looked at him for the first time. You are not part of this. He met her eyes. I am now. She studied him. Then looked to Anna again. Why alone? She asked. Why not ask us? Anna's breath caught. Because no one was asking. She whispered. Not the law. Not the town. Not the preachers. I thought if I made them hurt, if I showed them someone was watching, maybe the taking would stop. The woman's expression didn't change. But something in her stance softened. You speak like a mother who lost a child, she said. Anna swallowed. I lost a sister. Taken on a river trail. 2 years ago. Sold east. I never found her. But I found others. The woman walked to the tree, looked at the man hanging, then nodded once. The young warrior stepped forward again, fury on his breath. Let us kill him. The woman raised a hand. No, why not? She turned to Anna. What would you do? Anna stepped slowly forward, face unreadable. She looked at the man, looked at the crowd, then back at the boy now peeking from behind the rocks. Eyes wide, silent, clinging to the scarf she'd left behind. Her voice was low. Final. I want him to live with what he's done. Miles stared. Anna continued. Let the others see him marked. Shamed. Let him walk with no tribe. No name. That's worse than death. The silence broke. But not with violence. With understanding. The woman touched her staff to the ground and nodded. Behind them, the war drums stopped, not because peace had come, but because mercy had. And mercy, in places like this, was rarer than justice. The sun hadn't risen yet, but the sky was beginning to bruise, pale blue pressing against the last shreds of night. They'd cut him down from the tree. Not gently. The man hit the dirt with a thud that kicked up dust, and for a while, he didn't move. No one offered him water. No one looked him in the eye. His hands were still bound. The mark burned into his shoulder still raw and red that he was breathing. That was enough. Anna watched from the edge of the clearing, arms folded tight around her ribs. Her scarf was back around her neck now, but the blood along its edge hadn't been washed. She wore it like a reminder, or maybe like penance. The older woman approached her again, silent as the wind. You could have asked for death, she said. We would have given it. Anna shook her head. He doesn't get to vanish like the ones he took. The woman nodded slowly. The boy he remembers? Too much, and not enough. The older woman turned to look at him. He was sitting in the crook of a dead tree, fingers toying with a bit of leather cord. He hadn't spoken a word since the fire had gone out. I'll take him with me, the woman said. Anna's jaw tightened. No, the woman turned back, brows raised. I'm not done, Anna said. Not yet. There are more like him. You can't carry all of them. I'm not trying to carry, just trying to find. Miles stepped in before the air grew sharp again. His voice calm, almost reluctant. She's not asking for approval. She's asking for space. The woman studied him. You follow her now? He looked at Anna. Then he nodded. Not because I understand, he said, but because I believe her. That earned silence, and something like a smile at the corner of the old woman's lips. Not joy, just recognition. She stepped away. Her people followed, one by one, without words, like smoke folding back into the rocks. They left the man where he lay. Let him wake in shame, walk in exile. That was the sentence now. Anna didn't watch them go. She sat by the coals, hands trembling slightly. Exhaustion had carved itself deep into her spine. The kind of tired that sleep wouldn't fix. Miles walked to her, slow and deliberate. He held out a canteen. She took it. You didn't have to follow me, she said. He nodded. I know. So why did you? He looked out across the clearing. The boy now stood, watching a line of ants move through the ash. Calm, still, like the world had ended, and he was the only one who noticed. Because I've seen men lose their souls chasing things that should have stayed buried, Miles said. but I've never seen someone save theirs by digging. Anna stared at the fire. It had long since gone out. I was supposed to protect her, she whispered. Miles waited. My sister. She was only 17. I let her ride ahead one morning. Just a few miles. I figured I'd catch up by the river bend. Her voice cracked. Just a little. I found her horse. Not her. Miles didn't speak. I followed the trail. Paid bribes. Burned bridges. Shot a man in Kansas who lied about what he knew. And when I found out what they were doing out here, what they were selling, she shook her head. I couldn't stop. You're not the only one who should have tried, Miles said softly. They sat in the silence a while. No words left, just the rustle of wind through dry grass. The sound of the boy breathing. And far, far off, the slow creak of the earth waking up. Anna finally stood. I'm going south, she said. Toward the old cattle lines. That's where the trail leads next. Miles looked up. Then I'm going with you. She met his eyes, surprised. You sure? No, he said. But you don't leave a fire burning and walk away. He nodded toward the boy. He comes too. Anna's eyes softened. Can you ride 3 days with a child and no sleep? I've done worse, he said. At least this time I'll know why I'm doing it. The boy walked over then, slow, uncertain. He looked up at Anna, then Miles. Said nothing. She crouched in front of him. You ready? She asked. He didn't nod. Didn't shake his head. He just reached out and took her hand. That was answer enough. 3 days later, Hollow Bend woke to find 3 horses missing from the north stables. The preacher called it a theft. The sheriff called it something else. They're chasing ghosts, he told his deputy. But if they catch even one, maybe that's enough. No one ever asked again why Anna Calder walked alone. Because someone finally followed, and whatever he saw in that canyon, whatever passed between silence and fire and mercy, he never spoke of it again. 5 years later, the wind moved different across the plains now. The grass was taller, greener in places it had once turned gray. The old trail leading past Ash Hollow was quiet again, but not empty. Wagons moved across it sometimes, not the kind carrying stolen children or broken treaties, but families, riders, surveyors, even a teacher or two. And in the church back in Hollow Bend, a church that had sat half empty for years, a little boy stood up at the end of service and read a psalm in 2 languages, English and Mescalero Apache. The preacher just nodded, didn't say much anymore. Neither did the town. They watched more now. Miles Danton ran cattle on the southern edge of New Mexico territory. Not a big operation, just 40 head and a long stretch of water he'd dug out himself. A boy helped him, wiry and fast, probably 12 by now. Barely spoke, still didn't like loud voices, but he could calm a wild horse with a single glance. They called him Crow. No one asked why. Every month or so, a rider would show up. Not a courier, not a merchant. Anna Calder, she never stayed long. Always headed somewhere. Tucson, Las Cruces, even once to Santa Fe. She'd ride in with dust in her hair and maps in her saddlebag, sit with Miles under the cottonwood for a night, then ride out again before the sun got too high. They never said much when they met. They didn't need to. Some silences earned their place. But that final time she rode in, something was different. Crow ran to her horse before it had even stopped moving. She stepped down slow. Her left hand held a leather-bound ledger, thick, worn, packed with names. She handed it to Miles. These are the ones we found, she said. Miles turned the pages. Dozens of names. Some full, some partial, all handwritten. Children. She nodded. And the ones who took them. Crow looked over his shoulder at the names. No one spoke. Where to next? Miles asked. Anna wiped sweat from her brow. Nowhere. He blinked. What do you mean? I'm staying. He stared at her, reading her face. You done? She smiled. Not big, but real. No, she said. But I've built enough fires. It's time to sit by one. They buried the ledger behind the barn, inside a cedar box with 2 things laid on top, her old scarf and a single carved feather. Miles never asked why she chose that spot. Some things are left to rest, not explained. Years passed. Crow grew tall, spoke more, started reading old law books by lantern light, wrote letters to the Bureau of Indian Affairs that nobody answered. So he wrote them again. Anna opened a school on the edge of town, not in Hollow Bend, but nearby. She took in girls mostly. Apache, Yaqui, orphans, runaways, some with bruises, some with fire in their bones. She taught them how to read, how to write, how to stitch a wound and speak with pride. She never preached, never branded, never demanded answers. She just listened and taught them how not to disappear. One day, a woman came to town looking for someone. Said she was the cousin of a girl taken 12 years ago. Said she'd heard rumors about a woman with a ledger full of names. Said she wanted to know if her cousin's name was in there. Anna looked at her for a long time. Then she went inside and came out with the box. She opened it, pulled out the scarf, the feather, and handed her the ledger. The woman found the name on page 21, fell to her knees in the dust, and wept. Anna didn't speak, just placed a hand on her shoulder and sat beside her until the wind changed it. Sometimes, Miles would ride into town and sit by the edge of the school fence, watching the children run. He'd nod to Crow, now in a deputy's badge, now carrying letters to places that did answer. And sometimes, in the quiet dusk when the sky turned gold and the prairie glowed, he and Anna would sit on the porch and say nothing at all. Just two souls who had chased shadows and made peace with the ones they couldn't catch. There was no statue built and no plaque, just a cedar tree growing stronger every year beside the barn. Its roots deep, its trunk solid. Under it, a box. Inside it, a ledger, a scarf, and a carved feather. And in every breath of wind that moved through that hollow, the sound of mercy, the kind that doesn't shout, the kind that stays, the kind that remembers.